There she was, laughing at my father's jokes, her fingers brushing my husband's arm like it was nothing. Everyone saw it. Everyone pretended not to. But I didn't come here to cry. I came to win. Before this story unfolds, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The retirement party. The moment I walked into my father's retirement party and saw her standing beside my husband, I knew. Not because of the way she touched his arm, though that was too familiar, her fingers lingering just a second too long. Not because of the way he laughed at something she whispered, though his laugh was louder, more unguarded than it had been with me in months. No, I knew because of the way the room stiffened when I entered. The way my cousin Jessica suddenly found the ceiling fascinating. The way my father's booming voice faltered mid-sentence as his eyes darted between me and them. They all knew, and nobody had told me. Daniel turned, finally noticing me standing there in the doorway, my clutch gripped too tight in my hands. His smile didn't drop, but it shifted, just enough for me to see the flicker of guilt before he smoothed it over. "Lila," he said like my name was an apology. Claire, his work friend, the one he swore was just a colleague, had the decency to look uncomfortable. She tucked a strand of perfectly curled blonde hair behind her ear and took a tiny step back from him, as if that made a difference now. "You made it," Daniel said, crossing the room toward me. His hand reached for my waist, but I sidestepped, forcing a smile so sharp it hurt my cheeks. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, my voice light, even as my ribs squeezed around my lungs. The party swirled around us, soft jazz from the hired quartet, clinking glasses, laughter that sounded too loud in my ears. My father's retirement was supposed to be a celebration. 35 years at the same firm, a legacy. And here I was, standing in the middle of it, realizing my marriage was a lie. I grabbed a champagne flute from a passing waiter and downed half of it in one go. The bubbles burned my throat. "You okay?" The voice came from my left, low, calm. I turned to see a man I didn't recognize watching me with an expression that wasn't quite pity, more like recognition. He was tall, dressed in a suit that fit just a little too well to be off the rack, with dark hair and sharp green eyes that didn't look away when I met them. "Do I look not okay?" I countered. A faint smirk. "You look like you're 2 seconds away from either crying or setting something on fire." I huffed a laugh, surprised. "Both sound appealing right now." "Marcus Reed," he said, extending a hand. I took it. "Lila Carter." "I know." I raised an eyebrow. "Your dad talks about you," he explained. "Says you're the only person who ever outnegotiated him." That pulled a real smile from me. He still brings that up? Every time someone mentions law school applications. I exhaled, some of the tension in my shoulders loosening. For a second, I almost forgot about Daniel and Claire across the room. Almost. Then Marcus's gaze flickered past me, toward them, and his expression darkened. "You know," he said slowly, "if you ever need proof that your husband's an idiot, I've got a folder full of it." I froze. "What?" He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. "Reed Financial Consulting. Your husband fired me last April," he said, "after I found out he was funneling company money into an offshore account." He paused. Her name was on it. The room tilted. I stared at the card, then back at him. "You're lying." "I wish I was." He hesitated, then added, quieter, "I was going to give this to your dad tonight. But I think you should decide what happens next." Before I could respond, Daniel's voice cut through the noise. "Lila? Everything all right?" I turned. He was standing right behind me, his smile polite, but his eyes wary. Claire hovered a few steps back, pretending not to listen. "Everything's perfect," I said, sliding Marcus's card into my clutch without breaking eye contact. "Isn't it?" Daniel's smile tightened. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was the one in control. The USB of secrets. The card burned in my clutch like a live wire. I spent the rest of the party smiling, at my father's colleagues, at Daniel's fake compliments about the venue, even at Claire when she accidentally brushed against me near the dessert table. My cheeks ached from the effort, but I couldn't stop. If I let my face slip, even for a second, I might scream. Marcus Reed had vanished after our conversation, disappearing into the crowd before Daniel could notice him. But his words clung to me. A folder full of proof. Her name on the account. I needed air. Slipping onto the balcony, I gripped the railing and sucked in a breath. The Chicago skyline glittered below, indifferent to my unraveling life. You look like you're contemplating a murder. I didn't turn. Maybe I am. Marcus stepped beside me, handing over a fresh glass of champagne. I took it, our fingers brushing just enough to feel the calluses on his hands. Rough, unexpected for an accountant. You left fast, I said. Didn't want to give your husband a heart attack. He smirked. Yet. I studied him. The sharp line of his jaw, the way his suit sleeves strained slightly over his forearms. This wasn't a man who spent his life behind a desk. Why are you really here? Told you. Your dad's a client. And the offshore account. His smirk faded. Daniel fired me because I found it. Thought I'd keep quiet if he paid me off. A bitter laugh. Joke's on him. I don't take bribes from cheaters. The balcony door creaked open. Daniel's voice cut through the night. Lila, you out here? I downed the champagne in one gulp. Just getting some air. Daniel's gaze flicked to Marcus, then back to me. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Everyone's asking for you. Dad's about to give a speech. Wouldn't miss it. As Daniel retreated, Marcus pulled a USB drive from his pocket and pressed it into my hand. Everything's on here. Bank records, emails, even a few incriminating photos. My stomach twisted. Photos. Not what you're thinking. His voice dropped. But proof he's been planning this for months. Maybe longer. The USB felt heavy, like it held the weight of my marriage. Why give this to me? Marcus met my eyes. Because you deserve to know the truth before you decide what to do. Inside, the quartet struck up a waltz. My father's laughter rang out above the crowd. I slipped the USB into my clutch, next to the business card. What happens now? Marcus straightened his tie. Now you go back in there and pretend everything's fine. And tomorrow? He leaned in, his breath warm against my ear. You destroy him. The morning after. The USB drive sat on my kitchen counter like a grenade with the pin pulled out. I hadn't slept. Not after the party. Not after lying next to Daniel in bed, listening to his steady breathing while my mind raced through every interaction, every business trip, every time he'd come home late smelling like someone else's perfume. Claire's perfume. The coffee machine gurgled, the sound too loud in the empty house. Daniel had left early, another meeting. I didn't ask. I picked up the USB, turning it over in my fingers. Marcus's words echoed in my head. You destroy him. But first, I needed to see the damage for myself. My laptop hummed to life. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the USB port. Once I did this, there was no going back. No pretending. No more carefully constructed lies to keep my life from crumbling. I plugged it in. A single folder appeared, labeled RF_project. No theatrics, no dramatic titles. Just cold, clinical proof. The first document was a bank statement. Daniel's name, an account in the Caymans, 6 transfers over the past year. Each one dated right before one of his business trips. The amounts made my breath catch. $15,000. $20,000. $50,000. Our savings. My savings. The next file was a spreadsheet. Payments to a shell company, Claire Holdings LLC, with notes in Daniel's handwriting. Consulting fees. Discretion advised. I clicked on the photos next. Not the kind I'd feared. No bedroom shots, no scandalous vacations. Instead, security footage. Daniel and Claire at a bank, signing papers. Daniel handing her an envelope in a parking garage. Daniel meeting with a man I didn't recognize, bald, thick-necked, the kind of guy who looked like he'd break knees for fun. The last file was an email chain. Daniel's account. To claire.holdings@gmail.com. Subject, timeline. We need to move faster. Lila's getting suspicious. If she finds out about the transfers before the divorce, she could take half. We'll file in June. By then, everything will be where it needs to be. The date on the email was 3 weeks ago. The morning of my father's birthday dinner. The night Daniel had worked late. I slammed the laptop shut. My hands shook. My whole body shook. This wasn't just an affair. This was calculated. This was him stealing from me, from us, while he planned his exit. The doorbell rang. I wiped my face, when had I started crying, and forced myself to the door. Marcus stood on my porch, holding 2 coffees and a paper bag that smelled like cinnamon. Figured you might need this, he said, offering one of the cups. I didn't move. How did you know where I live? Your dad. He shrugged. Also, you're listed in the county property records. I stared at him. Forensic accountant, he added, as if that explained everything. I stepped aside to let him in. He set the coffees on the counter, eyeing my laptop. You looked. I looked. And I opened the laptop and turned it toward him. Tell me this isn't just about money. Marcus scrolled, his expression unreadable. When he got to the email, he let out a low whistle. He's not just cheating. He's covering his tracks. So, what do I do? Marcus took a sip of his coffee. First, you breathe. Second, you call a lawyer. Third, he reached into his jacket and pulled out another USB. Let me show you how we take everything back. I picked up the second drive. What's on this one? Marcus smiled. The fun part. The fun part. The second USB felt heavier than the first, like it held more than just files, it held a reckoning. I turned it over in my fingers, studying Marcus's face for any hint of what the fun part meant. His expression gave nothing away. Just those sharp green eyes watching me, waiting for my move. You're enjoying this, I accused. He took another sip of coffee. I enjoyed justice. I plugged in the USB. This time, the folder was labeled Operation Phoenix. Dramatic, but I wasn't in the mood to judge. Inside were 3 files, a video, a spreadsheet, and a document titled Phase 1. I clicked the video first. Security footage from what looked like a hotel lobby. Daniel and Claire walked into frame, her hand tucked possessively in the back pocket of his slacks. They were laughing, leaning into each other like they didn't have a care in the world. The timestamp read February 14th. Valentine's Day. The night Daniel had claimed he was stuck in Denver due to a snowstorm. The night I'd eaten cold takeout in front of the TV, texting him to be safe. My fingernails dug into my palms. The video cut to a second clip, a different hotel, different date. Claire pressing Daniel against an elevator wall, her mouth on his before the doors closed. Marcus paused it there. There's more, but you get the idea. I swallowed hard. How did you get these? Hotel security archives. Most places keep footage for 6 months. He tapped the spreadsheet. This is better, though. The spreadsheet listed every transaction from our joint accounts over the past year, with notes in red beside certain withdrawals. $3, $200, client dinner, receipt shows 1 meal, 2 cocktails, the Windsor Hotel bar. $1, $750, conference fees, no conference found under his name that month. $8, $000, bonus for Claire, not approved by HR. I scrolled further. The numbers blurred. He wasn't even trying to hide it, I whispered. He didn't think he had to. Marcus zoomed in on a $25,000 transfer dated 2 days after my mother's funeral. This one's my favorite. Listed as a charitable donation. The room tilted. I remembered that week. How Daniel had held me while I sobbed, how he'd handled all the funeral arrangements. And the whole time, he'd been stealing. I slammed the laptop shut. What's Phase 1? Marcus leaned forward. We hit him where it hurts. His reputation. He explained in cold, precise detail, anonymous tips to the IRS about the offshore account. Leaked emails to Daniel's board members. A carefully timed expose in the Chicago Tribune's finance section. It'll take 2 weeks to set up, he said. But once it starts, he'll know it's me. Marcus studied me. You scared? I thought of Valentine's Day. Of my mother's funeral. Of Claire's smug smile at the retirement party. I opened the laptop again. Show me how to leak the emails. The first strike. My hands didn't shake as I pressed send on the first anonymous email. That surprised me. I'd expected trembling fingers, second thoughts, maybe even tears. Instead, there was just cold certainty as I watched the message disappear into cyberspace, a digital grenade rolling toward Daniel's polished corporate world. Marcus sat across from me at my kitchen table, monitoring his own laptop. IRS tip submitted, he said without looking up. They'll freeze his offshore account within 48 hours. I nodded, staring at the screen where I'd just sent incriminating bank records to Martin Cho, the most ruthless reporter at the Tribune. The same reporter who'd eviscerated 3 city council members last year with his financial exposés. Will he know it's me? I asked for the second time that day. Marcus finally looked up. Eventually. But by then, it won't matter. He reached across the table and turned my laptop toward him, scanning my work. Good. Just the facts, no emotional language. Makes it more credible. I'd spent 3 days preparing these documents, highlighting transactions, cross-referencing dates, building an airtight case even a corporate lawyer couldn't dismiss. It should have felt satisfying. Instead, it just felt hollow. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 7. Daniel would be home soon, probably smelling like Claire's vanilla perfume and some expensive scotch from the club. I closed the laptop with a snap. I can't be here when he gets back. Marcus didn't argue. He simply stood, gathering his things. I know place. 20 minutes later, we sat in a dimly lit corner booth at O'Malley's, the kind of old Chicago bar where the wood was sticky with decades of spilled beer and nobody asked questions. Marcus ordered us 2 whiskeys neat, while I stared at my phone. 3 missed calls from Daniel. You should turn that off, Marcus said, pushing one glass toward me. I drained half of it in one burning gulp. What if this doesn't work? It'll work. But what if? Lila. Marcus's hand covered mine on the table, warm and steady. By this time next week, his board will be calling emergency meetings. His golf buddies will cross the street to avoid him. And Claire? He smirked. She'll realize she bet on the wrong horse. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. So why did I feel like I might shatter into a million pieces? The whiskey burned its way down my throat as my phone lit up again. This time it was a text. Where are you? We need to talk. I showed Marcus. He raised an eyebrow. That was fast. Before I could respond, another message came through. Someone sent the board doctored financials. They're calling an audit. Marcus's grin was all teeth. Phase 1 has begun. I turned off my phone and ordered another drink. The unraveling. The whiskey had blurred the edges of my anger by the time we left O'Malley's, but the core of it remained, white-hot and pulsing. Marcus walked me to his car, one hand hovering near the small of my back like he expected me to stumble. I didn't. My apartment was dark when we arrived, the kind of heavy silence that screamed absence. No Daniel. I checked my phone. 12 more missed calls, a string of increasingly frantic texts. The last one made my breath catch. They suspended me. What the hell did you do? Marcus read it over my shoulder. Right on schedule. He moved through my kitchen with familiar ease, brewing coffee despite the late hour. The rich aroma cut through the alcohol fog in my brain. I slumped onto a bar stool. He knows it was me. He suspects. Marcus set a steaming mug in front of me. But he can't prove anything. Not yet. The coffee burned my tongue, but I welcomed the pain. Something real. Something tangible. Outside, a car door slammed. Tires screeched. Marcus went perfectly still. Expecting company? The pounding on my front door answered for me. Daniel's voice came through the wood, slurred with rage and alcohol. Lila, open the goddamn door. Every muscle in my body locked. I'd imagined this moment 100 times. The confrontation, the screaming match, the catharsis of watching him beg. But now that it was here, I couldn't move. Marcus placed his hand over mine again. Your call. The door shuddered under another barrage of blows. I know you're in there. Your car's out front. I stood so fast the bar stool toppled over. Stay here. Not a chance. Marcus followed me to the foyer, positioning himself just out of sight. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Daniel looked wrecked. His tie hung loose around his neck, his expensive suit wrinkled like he'd slept in it. The smell of bourbon rolled off him in waves. But it was his eyes that shocked me. Wild, desperate, the eyes of a man watching his life burn. He shoved past me into the apartment. "What did you?" The words died when he saw Marcus. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Daniel's face twisted through a dozen emotions: shock, realization, fury. When he finally spoke, his voice was terrifyingly calm. "So, this is how you're getting back at me? Fucking the help." Marcus didn't flinch. "We were just having coffee, Daniel. Though I understand why you jumped to that conclusion." Daniel lunged. I stepped between them without thinking, my palms slamming against Daniel's chest. "Get out." He grabbed my wrists. "This is my house to you." Marcus moved then, fast as a striking snake. One hand clamped on Daniel's shoulder, the other twisting his grip away from me. She said, "Get out." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Daniel yanked free, breathing hard. "This isn't over." He stabbed a finger at Marcus. "You're finished in this city." Marcus smiled. "Already fired, remember?" Daniel turned that finger on me. "You think this ends well for you? You're nothing without me." Nothing. The words should have hurt. A week ago, they would have. Now, they just sounded pathetic. I walked to the door and held it open. "Goodbye, Daniel." He left with a final glare, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the pictures on the walls. The sound of his car peeling away faded into the night. My hands started shaking then. Full-body tremors that made my teeth chatter. Marcus guided me to the couch, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. "You okay?" I wasn't. But I would be. "Phase 2 starts tomorrow," I said, and my voice didn't shake at all. Phase 2. The morning sun sliced through my bedroom curtains, pulling me from a sleep I didn't remember falling into. My mouth tasted like whiskey and regret. The events of last night came rushing back. Daniel's drunken rage, the way Marcus had stepped between us, the venom in my husband's voice when he'd called me nothing. I reached for my phone. 37 missed calls. A text from Marcus waited at the top of the screen. "Phase 2 begins at noon. Dress for war." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Last night had changed something. The gloves were off now. Daniel knew I was coming for him, and that made everything more dangerous. The shower scalded my skin as I washed away the remnants of the whiskey and the lingering scent of Daniel's cologne from where he'd grabbed me. I dressed carefully. A tailored black pantsuit, heels sharp enough to draw blood, the emerald earrings my mother had left me. Armor. Marcus was waiting outside in a sleek silver Audi I'd never seen before. He leaned against the hood, sipping coffee from a paper cup. "Sleep well?" "Like the dead." I took the second cup he offered. The coffee was bitter, no sugar. Just how I liked it. I frowned. "How did you? Your kitchen." He opened the passenger door for me. "We've got a meeting." "With who?" He slid into the driver's seat, his smile all edges. "The man who's going to bury Daniel Carter." The car purred to life. Downtown Chicago blurred past the windows as Marcus navigated the streets with practiced ease. "Where are we really going?" I asked. "Law offices of Cho and Associates." My stomach dropped. Martin Cho? The reporter? Turns out journalism was just his side hustle. Marcus adjusted his grip on the steering wheel. "He passed the bar 10 years ago. Specializes in financial litigation." The pieces clicked together. "You sent him those documents to get his attention." Bingo. The law office occupied the top floor of a steel and glass tower overlooking the river. Everything screamed money, from the silent elevator to the receptionist's perfectly manicured nails. Martin Cho stood when we entered his office. He was younger than I expected, mid-30s maybe, with the kind of sharp features that made you think of knives and late-night interrogations. "Mrs. Carter." He extended a hand. "I've been looking forward to this." His office walls were lined with framed newspaper articles, all his bylines, all exposing corporate corruption. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus took a seat without being asked. Tell her what you found. Cho tapped a manila folder on his desk. Your husband isn't just embezzling. He's laundering money for some very dangerous people. He flipped the folder open, revealing surveillance photos of Daniel meeting with the same thick-necked man from the USB footage. Victor Ramos, Cho said, runs half the organized crime in this city. Your husband's been moving his money offshore for a cut. The room tilted. I gripped the arms of my chair. Daniel wouldn't. Wouldn't what? Cho arched an eyebrow. Betray you? Break the law. He pushed another document toward me, a bank statement showing a $250,000 deposit into Daniel's Cayman account dated the day after my mother's funeral. Marcus leaned forward. Here's the play. We go after Ramos first. Cho files a motion to freeze all of Daniel's accounts as part of a RICO investigation. Once Daniel's assets are locked down. Claire bolts, I finished. Cho nodded. And your husband finds himself alone, broke, and on the wrong side of some very angry criminals. The plan was brutal, elegant, everything Daniel deserved. I looked from Cho to Marcus. When do we start? Marcus checked his watch. About 20 minutes ago. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A news alert from the Tribune. Prominent Chicago banker tied to organized crime probe. Phase 2 had begun. The trap closes. The Tribune articles spread like wildfire across Chicago's financial district. By noon, my phone had become a relentless buzzing creature, vibrating with calls from shocked colleagues, concerned friends, and 3 different divorce attorneys offering their services. I silenced them all. Marcus and I watched the fallout unfold from a corner table at a cafe 2 blocks from Daniel's office. The television above the bar played a continuous news loop, footage of federal agents entering the bank's headquarters, grainy photos of Victor Ramos being escorted into custody, and worst of all for Daniel's pride, a zoomed-in shot of him being turned away at the building's security desk. His access cards were revoked at 9:17 a.m., Marcus murmured, checking his watch. Right on schedule. I stirred my espresso, watching the dark liquid swirl. How long until he comes for me? Depends how desperate he gets. Marcus slid a manila envelope across the table. Which is why you should take these. Inside were documents, a temporary restraining order, a lease agreement for a luxury apartment under a shell corporation, and new bank cards in my name only. I looked up sharply. You think I need to hide? I think Daniel's about to realize exactly how screwed he is. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and smirked. Speaking of which.
He turned the phone toward me.
A text from an unknown number lit up the screen. Tell Lila she wins. I'll sign whatever she wants. Just call off the dogs. I nearly laughed. He thinks I control the federal investigation. He's panicking. Marcus pocketed his phone. Ramos's people will be looking for someone to blame. Daniel knows he's first on that list. The cafe door chimed. My breath caught as a familiar silhouette appeared in the entrance. Not Daniel, but someone almost worse.
Claire.
She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her usually perfect blonde hair hung limp around her shoulders, and her designer dress was wrinkled like she'd worn it for too long. When she spotted us, she hesitated, then marched to our table with the determination of someone walking to the gallows. Marcus tensed beside me. I need to talk to you, Claire said, her voice barely above a whisper. Alone. I should have refused. Should have thrown my espresso in her face. But something in her eyes, real, raw fear, stopped me. I nodded to Marcus. Give us 5 minutes. He moved to the counter, close enough to intervene if needed, but out of earshot. Claire collapsed into his vacant chair. They froze my accounts. Good. She flinched. Lila, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. I kept my voice low, lethal. You helped him steal from me. From my family. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? Tears welled in her bloodshot eyes. I didn't know about Ramos.
I swear.
Daniel told me the money was from offshore investments. And you believed him? I leaned forward. Or did you just not care as long as you got your cut? A tear spilled over. He said you were separating anyway. that you had your own. Stop. I held up a hand. Whatever lies he told you, save them. Why are you here? Claire swallowed hard. Ramos's lawyer contacted me. They think I was involved. They're threatening me. Her manicured fingers trembled around her purse strap. I have information. Emails, recordings. Proof Daniel orchestrated everything. I'll give it all to you if… If what? If you make sure I don't go to prison. The irony was almost poetic. Daniel's mistress, betraying him to save herself. I studied her shaking hands, the genuine terror in her eyes. Claire wasn't a mastermind. She was just another one of Daniel's casualties. Marcus returned, placing a fresh espresso in front of me. Time's up. I made my decision. Give everything to Mr. Cho, I told Claire. If it's useful, maybe we'll consider your request. She opened her mouth to protest, but I was already standing. Marcus fell into step beside me as we left her there, weeping into her hands. Outside, the afternoon sun glinted off the skyscrapers. Think she'll cooperate? He asked. I thought of Daniel's text, tell Lila she wins, and smiled. She already has. The devil's bargain. Claire's files arrived at midnight in a plain manila envelope, delivered by a courier who disappeared before I could ask questions. The envelope contained a USB drive and a single handwritten note. He recorded everything. Protect me. Marcus and I gathered around my kitchen table, the glow of my laptop casting sharp shadows across our faces. The USB contained 3 folders, emails, audio recordings, and something labeled Ramos transactions. I clicked the first audio file. Daniel's voice filled the room, crisp and clear. The widow's account is perfect. Nobody will question large withdrawals if they think it's grief spending. My blood turned to ice. He was talking about my mother's estate. Marcus's jaw tightened as the recording continued, Daniel detailing how he'd forged my signature on inheritance documents, how he'd funneled the money through Claire's LLC to avoid suspicion. The amounts made me physically ill. This is enough to put him away for a decade, Marcus muttered, scrolling through accompanying bank statements. I opened a Ramos folder next. Spreadsheets, wire transfer confirmations, even photographs of Daniel handing Victor Ramos a briefcase in some dimly lit parking garage. The timestamp on the photo was 2 days after my mother's funeral. The final folder contained emails, dozens of them, between Daniel and Claire. I forced myself to read every one. The affair had started nearly a year ago, long before I'd suspected. But worse than the romantic betrayal were the casual mentions of me. Lila's getting nosy about the Denver trip. Play the jealous wife card if she calls you. Her father's retirement party is the perfect cover for the Cayman transfer. Just keep her distracted until June. Then we're free. I closed the laptop with shaking hands. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence. Marcus studied me. You okay?
No.
I stood abruptly, knocking over my chair. I need air. The balcony was freezing, the Chicago wind biting through my sweater. I gripped the railing until my knuckles turned white, gulping in deep breaths. Marcus joined me minutes later, holding 2 glasses of bourbon. He didn't speak, just handed me a glass and leaned against the railing, staring at the skyline. We have everything we need now, I said finally. So, why does it feel like I'm the one who got played? Marcus swirled his drink. Because revenge doesn't heal betrayal. It just balances the scales. The bourbon burned going down. What happens tomorrow? Cho files the motion to seize Daniel's assets at 9 a.m. Federal prosecutors will pick up the Ramos case. And you, he turned to face me. You decide what comes next. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. The message contained a single photo. Daniel sitting in a dive bar, a half-empty bottle of whiskey in front of him. The caption read, "He's making calls." Marcus's phone rang seconds later. Cho's voice crackled through the speaker. We have a problem. Ramos just made bail. The pieces clicked together. Daniel's desperate texts, Claire's fear. Now Ramos free and angry. I met Marcus's gaze. He's going to run. Marcus was already moving, grabbing our coats. Not if we get to him first. The hunt. Rain slashed against the windshield as Marcus sped through downtown Chicago, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The wipers fought a losing battle against the downpour, the neon signs blurring into streaks of color through the water-streaked glass. I clutched my phone, refreshing the tracking app Marcus had hacked into. Daniel's cell signal pulsed like a heartbeat on the map, moving erratically through the city's west side. He's not heading for the airport, I noted, watching the zigzag between side streets. Marcus took a sharp left without signaling. He's panicking. Probably doesn't even know where he's going. The radio crackled with a news update about Victor Ramos's release on bail. The reporter's voice turned grave as she mentioned retaliation expected against those who cooperated with investigators. My stomach twisted. However much I hated Daniel now, the thought of him ending up in a dumpster behind some warehouse made me physically ill. Marcus's phone buzzed in the cup holder. Cho's name flashed on the screen. Put him on speaker, I said. Cho's voice cut through the static of the storm. Bad news. Daniel just emptied your joint savings account at an ATM near 18th and Ashland. I sucked in a breath. How much? $32,000. And he used your mother's maiden name as the PIN. The betrayal burned fresh. That account had been my safety net, funded with inheritance money from my grandparents.
Daniel knew what it meant to me.
Marcus exchanged a glance with me. He's running scared, but he's not thinking straight. That withdrawal leaves a paper trail. The tracking app pinged. Daniel's signal had stopped moving. The pulse steadily near a cluster of warehouses by the river. Marcus swore under his breath. That's Ramos territory. Rain drummed harder on the roof as we sat in tense silence, weighing options. Going there was suicide, but letting Daniel walk into Ramos's hands. I made the decision before I could second-guess myself. We call the police. An anonymous tip about a fugitive banker meeting with Ramos. Marcus's mouth tightened. Cops won't get there in time. Then what do you suggest? My voice cracked. We can't just... A new alert cut me off. The tracking vanished. Marcus slammed his palm against the wheel. He turned off his phone. The car idled at a red light, rain pouring down like the city itself was weeping. My mind raced through scenarios, each worse than the last. Then my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Unknown number. I answered on speaker. Silence at first, then ragged breathing. When Daniel finally spoke, his voice was barely recognizable, hoarse and shaking. Lila, I need help. Marcus mouthed trace it as I kept him talking. Where are you? Old textile mill on Morgan. Ramos's guys are... A crash in the background, then a string of curses. They're coming. Please. The line went dead. Marcus already had the car in motion before I could process what just happened. Tires screeched as we cut across 3 lanes of traffic. Why would he call me? I whispered, more to myself than Marcus. The answer came as we turned onto Morgan Street. The abandoned mill loomed ahead, its broken windows like empty eye sockets. 3 black SUVs idled out front, their headlights cutting through the rain. Marcus killed our lights and parked a block away. Because you're the only one who'd come. He reached under his seat and pulled out a handgun, checking the magazine with practiced ease. The metallic click sent a shiver down my spine. We're not going in there, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. We call the police and wait. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. But as he reached for his phone, gunfire erupted from the mill, 3 sharp cracks echoing through the night. Without thinking, I threw open the car door and ran toward the sound. Blood in the water. The rain soaked through my clothes before I'd taken 10 steps, the cold Chicago downpour turning the abandoned lot into a shallow lake. My heels sank into mud as I ran, but I didn't slow down. The gunshots still echoed in my ears. Marcus caught up to me just as I reached the mill's rusted service entrance, grabbing my arm with enough force to spin me around. Water dripped from his hair as he leaned close, his voice a furious whisper. Are you trying to get us both killed? Another gunshot rang out inside, closer this time, followed by the sound of shattering glass. I wrenched free. He's going to die in there. And if Ramos's men see you? Marcus's grip tightened. You'll die with him. The truth of his words hit me like a physical blow. But before I could respond, a new sound cut through the storm. Sirens in the distance, growing louder. Marcus's head snapped toward the noise. Police. They must have tracked the gunshots. A crash came from inside the mill, then the squeal of tires. The black SUVs peeled away from the building, speeding off into the night.
We didn't speak.
Just ran for the nearest entrance, a shattered loading dock door hanging crooked on its hinges. The interior smelled of mildew and something metallic.
Blood.
Flashlight beams cut through the darkness ahead. I froze when I saw them, 3 figures moving through the cavernous space. Not police. Not Ramos's men. Federal agents. Marcus pulled me behind a stack of rotting pallets just as one agent shouted, "Clear?" Their lights swept over our hiding spot, then moved on. That's when I saw him. Daniel lay sprawled near a rusted-out machine, one hand clutching his side where dark blood seeped between his fingers. His face was ashen, his breathing shallow. But his eyes, when they locked onto mine through the shadows, held a clarity I hadn't seen in months. He mouthed 2 words, "I'm sorry." Then the agents were there, shouting for medics, blocking my view. Marcus yanked me backward as more official vehicles arrived outside, their flashing lights painting the rain red and blue. We slipped out the way we'd come, unnoticed in the chaos. The cold night air hit me like a slap as we emerged, reality crashing down. Marcus guided me to a dripping overhang. "Look at me." His hands framed my face. "You're in shock." I was shaking, but not from the cold. The image of Daniel bleeding out wouldn't leave me. He saw me, and he won't say a word. Marcus's thumbs brushed my cheeks, wiping away rain or tears. I couldn't tell which. Not unless he wants to explain why his estranged wife was at his botched money drop. The sirens multiplied. An ambulance skidded to a stop near the entrance. Marcus tugged my hand. "We need to go. Now." I let him lead me away, but my head kept turning back toward the mill. Toward Daniel, the man who'd betrayed me. The man I'd just risked everything to save. And as we disappeared into the storm, I realized with terrible clarity, this wasn't over. The reckoning. 3 days passed before I saw Daniel again. He was on the front page of the Chicago Tribune, pale and handcuffed, being led into a federal courthouse. The headline screamed, "Banker turned money launderer faces 25 years." I set the paper down carefully on my new kitchen counter. The luxury apartment Marcus had secured for me overlooked Lake Michigan, all sleek surfaces and floor-to-ceiling windows. A fresh start. A gilded cage. My phone buzzed with Marcus's daily check-in. Cho filed the divorce papers. "You're clear." I traced the newspaper photo with one finger. Daniel looked hollowed out, his designer suit hanging loose on his frame. The article mentioned a gunshot wound, a plea deal in progress, and most interestingly, his full cooperation with investigators against Victor Ramos.
The doorbell rang.
Marcus stood in the hallway holding 2 coffees and a manila envelope. He took one look at the newspaper and frowned. "You shouldn't torture yourself." "I'm not." I stepped aside to let him in. "Just making sure the story ends properly." He dropped the envelope on the counter. It landed with a thud. "Final asset distribution. The judge awarded you the house, your mother's estate funds, and 60% of remaining marital assets." I didn't open it. The numbers didn't matter anymore. "And Claire?" "Fled to Canada last night." Marcus handed me a coffee. Smart girl. We stood in silence, watching the lake through the windows. The water shimmered, endless and calm. Marcus cleared his throat. "There's one more thing." He pulled a single sheet of paper from his jacket, a handwritten letter. Daniel's slanted script was unmistakable. I didn't take it. "Burn it." Marcus hesitated, then folded it back up. "He asked me to tell you something." "I don't care what." He said thank you. Marcus's voice softened. "For saving his life that night." The words hit like a punch to the throat. All the anger, the betrayal, the months of meticulous revenge, it all condensed into that one moment. That stupid, human moment of weakness in the mill. I turned away so Marcus wouldn't see my face crumple. I didn't do it for him. A beat of silence. Then warm hands settled on my shoulders, turning me gently around. Marcus's eyes searched mine. Then why did you? The truth spilled out before I could stop it. Because I needed to know I wasn't like him. Marcus exhaled sharply, like he'd been holding his breath for months. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled me into a hug. Not romantic. Not transactional. Just human. We stood like that for a long time, two survivors in a sunlit kitchen, the wreckage of our revenge scattered around us. When we finally pulled apart, Marcus wiped a thumb under my eye, catching a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. So, he said, stepping back with forced lightness. What now? I looked past him to the lake, to the horizon, to whatever came next. Now we live. Before you go, if this story of betrayal and redemption resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe for more gripping tales of justice served. Turn on notifications so you never miss when karma comes knocking. And remember, no matter how deep the betrayal, your comeback is always worth watching.